Welcome back to True Crime for Sleep. If you've got a case you want covered, drop it in the comments and like and subscribe if you want more. Tonight, you're following an identity thief who doesn't need a computer, just a typewriter and patience. You're in a fluorescent evidence room, coffee gone cold, staring at a credit application that looks too perfect. The letters sit unnaturally straight, like they were marched into place, one keystroke at a time. You tilt the page, and the ink tells on itself. A chipped lowercase e, a T that strikes high, pressure from carbon paper. You start treating typing like ballistics, building a comparison set from originals, envelopes, and every carbon copy you can pry loose. Outside, a post office box empties at the same minute each evening, and somebody's paycheck starts vanishing into an account she never opened. So when the next stack of change of address forms hits a blue drop box after midnight, what's the first mechanical defect that forces the paper trail to collapse? You don't start with the corpse. You start with the paperwork, pretending there was never a corpse at all. The file folder says the applicant is deceased, 2 years cold in the ground, and still somehow eager for a new line of credit. Congratulations, you've found the only thing more stubborn than grief, a bureaucratic system that will accept anything if it is neatly typed. You slide the page under the glass of the examiner's lamp, and the fibers shine back like tiny bones. The ink is not printer toner. It is ribbon ink, uneven at the edges, heavier where somebody struck harder, lighter where the machine hesitated. That chipped lowercase e is your first real witness. And it can't lawyer up. The bank fraud detective stands behind you, smelling like winter air and old impatience. He tells you the bank thinks it is a clean case, just a stolen mailer and a fake signature. You tell him no. This is not a kid with scissors and a stolen envelope. This is someone who still believes in machines with moving parts. And that belief comes with habits. By the time your coffee goes from cold to insulting, you have the first escalation in your hands. 3 applications, not one, all with the same straight-backed letters and the same wounded E. Different names, different dates of birth, same rhythm, like the typist has a favorite tempo. Milwaukee, 1992, and you are about to learn what it sounds like when paper starts stealing a life. You make the first call that matters. You ask the bank for originals, not photocopies, and you say it like an order. Photocopies are gossip. Originals are testimony. You want the envelope, the inserts, the carbon copies, anything the form touched on its way into the world. The detective grunts like you are slowing him down, but he does it anyway. An hour later, he drops a small stack onto your table, like he is paying a debt he resents. You sort them the way you sort any crime scene. Outside in, top to bottom. Clean hands. One envelope has a faint indentation pattern on the back flap, like someone pressed too hard while writing on top of it. That is not handwriting. That is a machine's pressure, a ghost imprint, and it tells you carbon paper was involved. Carbon paper is old-fashioned, sure. It is also a thief's best friend. It makes an instant duplicate, and it keeps the original clean enough to pass as official. You lift the envelope under oblique light, and the pressed lines appear like a map. Not readable, not yet, but present. Presence is everything in your line of work. You request the postal routing records tied to the return address, and you already know what you are going to see. A post office box, a numbered mouth that eats names. Box 418, downtown Milwaukee, opened with a birth certificate that belongs to someone very real. Not the dead man, someone else, alive and about to be very angry when their life starts stuttering. Now, you have a place in the world where the thief must eventually stand. Your lab is quiet except for the hum of lights and the slow, tired rattle of file drawers. You begin building a comparison set because typewriters are like people. They have flaws. They repeat themselves. A chipped letter, a high-striking T, a little wobble on the left margin where the platen roller has worn uneven. You feed one application into the microscope camera and freeze the lowercase e on the screen. The chip is not random. It is a missing serif, a tiny byte taken out of the bottom curve. The same byte appears in every E across every document. That means one of two things. One machine did all of this, or the thief is absurdly disciplined about using the same damage type element. Either way, it is not casual. It is a routine. And routines are how you catch people who think they are invisible. The bank detective asks you what you need next. You give him the answer he hates: time and more paper. You also ask for something that makes him blink. Every change of address form tied to these names, even the ones the bank does not care about. He starts to argue because bank cases live and die in bank walls, but you cut him off. This is identity theft, and the bank is just the symptom that noticed first. The real infection is in the mail. 2 days later, a postal inspector walks into your evidence room like he owns the place, because, in a way, he does. He introduces himself, hands you a thin stack of forms, and tells you Box 418 has been busy, not loud busy, quiet busy, which is the kind that ruins lives. Replacement cards, account confirmations, pre-approved offers. Those bland white envelopes that people throw away until they need them back. You flip through the forms, and the same defects look up at you like familiar faces. The broken E again, the high T, and a pressure pattern that suggests the typist is using carbon paper like training wheels, keeping alignment perfect. The inspector tells you something else, and it lands heavier than it should. The box is emptied every evening at exactly 6:12, not around 6, not after dinner. 6:12, like a metronome, he says the clerk noticed because the person never chats, never lingers, never checks anything twice, just opens, scoops, closes, walks. If you wanted to build a human habit to exploit, you could not ask for a better one. You look at the inspector and you feel the case tilt from theory into pursuit. You have a schedule. Schedules can be watched. Watched schedules can be interrupted. Your decision point comes early, and it is the kind that pretends to be simple. Do you sit in the lab and build your perfect forensic narrative? Or do you leave the comfort of controlled light and go stand in a real building with fluorescent halls and strangers? You choose the post office. Forensics is patient. Victims are not. At 5:45 in the evening, you are in the downtown Milwaukee post office, trying to look like you belong. You do not. Nobody belongs in a post office at dusk unless they are desperate or employed. The air smells like wet coats and paper dust. A line moves slowly, held together by sighs and small muttered complaints. You and the inspector take a position with a clear view of the post office boxes. Not close enough to stare, close enough to see hands. Every minute drags because waiting always feels like failure when you are tired. At 6:11, nothing happens. Your stomach tightens anyway because your brain loves superstition. At 6:12, exactly, a figure steps into the box area with the calm of someone arriving on time to their own private appointment. Medium height, dark coat, a knit cap, pulled low, gloves, too clean for a Milwaukee winter. Not the thick, ugly gloves people wear when they have to shovel. These are thin, snug, for grip, for not leaving anything behind. The person opens box 418 with a key that does not hesitate. They pull out a bundle of mail, already knowing what it will feel like in their hand. They do not sort it there. They do not read it. They just pocket it and leave, and you catch the smallest detail, the one that makes you swallow. The person's left shoulder dips slightly with each step, like they are carrying weight on one side. A bag strap, a satchel, or a hidden stack of forms under a coat. You move without thinking, and the inspector catches your sleeve. Not yet, his eyes say. Not here. Not without a reason that survives in court. The figure is gone in less than 20 seconds, and your pulse keeps going like it missed the memo. You have the timing, you have the manner. You still do not have the name. Back at the office, you do the unglamorous part. You pull box opening paperwork, the forms filed when box 418 was rented. The name on the rental is real. The identification number checks out. The address checks out. But the signature looks like it was typed, not written. A blocky imitation pressed into the line with awkward spacing. Typed signatures are a red flag in a world that pretends pens are sacred. You ask the inspector to subpoena mail forwarding changes tied to the names you have. He sighs like a man who has watched paperwork breed. Then he does it, because he has seen what happens when you do not. The results come back in a way that feels almost rude. Mail forwarding requests filed within 48 hours of each credit application. Forwarding from real addresses to new ones that do not make sense. Vacant apartments. Short-term rentals. One address that turns out to be a laundromat's back office. Each request has a typed signature. Each one shows your broken knee. Now you have cause and effect you can explain to a judge. Typed form arrives, mail reroutes, bank accounts open, money disappears, and people keep living their lives until the moment they try to buy groceries and their card declines. The human part shows up when the bank detective drops a new file onto your desk and does not make a joke this time. An ICU nurse, late 20s, steady job, clean credit. Her paycheck is vanishing. Not late, not reduced. Vanishing, redirected into an account she never opened. Payroll swears it is a simple update, a new direct deposit slip. The slip was typed. The slip was submitted with a change of address. The slip has the same broken E, like a signature from a machine with a limp. You call her because you need her to say out loud that she did not do this. She answers on a break, voice thin with exhaustion, hospital noise behind her, like a constant alarm. She tells you she has never touched a typewriter in her life. She tells you she does everything online. She tells you she has been too tired to check her mail, and now she feels stupid for that. You tell her to stop. This is not stupidity. This is somebody else using the slow parts of her life against her, and the anger in her breath changes your tempo. This is not about dead files anymore. This is about an alive person losing rent money while working night shifts. You get another development the same afternoon, because criminals love patterns and hate restraint. A second victim, a middle-aged man whose mortgage company calls him about a missed payment he never missed. His mail was forwarded too. His account notices were swallowed by Box 418. His credit is now wearing bruises. The thief is not picking random targets. They are picking people who are busy, people who will not notice until the damage is old enough to fight back. You and the inspector sit down with a wall calendar and start marking dates, mail forwards, bank applications, payroll changes, box pickups at 6:12. You trace a route like you are tracking a predator, because that is what this is, a predator that hunts with forms and patience. The calendar shows you something you cannot unsee. Every major submission happens after midnight. The blue drop boxes get fed at night when witnesses are asleep, and streetlights make everybody look like a shadow. You think about the thick stack of forms you saw in your imagination, not yet in your hands. You think about the way paper makes sound when it slides into metal. Soft. Final. The postal inspector tells you there are cameras on some drop boxes, but not all. You decide which ones matter by following the addresses on the forwarding forms. A cluster. 3 boxes within a short drive, all near main roads, all easy to approach and leave without being noticed. You request surveillance footage from nearby businesses because post office cameras rarely give you what you need. Businesses do, because businesses never trust the night. The footage is grainy, black and white, full of headlights and boredom. But at 12:43 one morning, a figure steps into frame, and your body reacts before your mind does. Same posture, same shoulder dip, same neat gloves. They approach the blue box and feed in a stack of paper so thick it takes 2 pushes. That is not a normal letter. That is a day's work for someone who believes in paper. You freeze frame and zoom in until the pixels start to beg for mercy. At the edge of the stack, you see it. The dull, dark sheen of carbon paper, that almost oily black that looks like it stains the air. Now you have your first real chase point, and it is still frustratingly indirect. You can't see the face, you can't see the plate, but you can see the method, and method is identity. The next decision is another fork. You can keep building the forensic case and hope the thief makes a mistake that lands in your lap. Or you can force the mistake by tightening the net around the only physical habit you know. Box 418-612 sharp. You decide to pressure the box, not by closing it. That tips them off. You pressure it by watching it harder, longer, with more eyes. You and the inspector arrange a plainclothes stakeout, not just inside the post office, but outside too. 1 person on the doors, 1 person on the sidewalk, 1 person in a parked car with a view of the street. It feels like overkill for mail. It never is. Mail is how you reach into someone's home without stepping inside. At 6:10, the post office hums with the last of the day's errands. At 6:11, your throat goes dry because anticipation is always physical. At 6:12, the figure appears again, like your suspect thinks the world resets at that minute. They open box 418, scoop the mail, and turn. This time you let them leave the building. This time you let the sidewalk take them, because you need to see what happens next. They walk 2 blocks unhurried. They do not check behind them, which is either arrogance or experience. They stop at a battered sedan parked under a street lamp that flickers like it is tired too. The trunk opens, A bag goes in, and for half a second, you see something pale inside the trunk. A manila envelope, thick, the kind people use for documents they do not want folded. The figure closes the trunk and slides into the driver's seat. The engine starts, and your team makes the choice every surveillance crew hates. Do you follow and risk losing them, or do you stop and risk never finding their home base? You follow. The sedan pulls away like it has done this 100 times, smooth and unhurried, the way guilty people drive when they think nobody's watching. You sit low in the passenger seat of an unmarked car, watching brake lights smear red across wet pavement. You tell yourself you are just following mail. You are not. You are following the moment someone's life becomes a forwarding address. The postal inspector rides your bumper in a second car, far enough back to look accidental. Your driver keeps a lazy distance, like you are headed home too. In the rearview mirror, the city turns into a strip of sodium lights and tired storefronts. The suspect's car takes 3 right turns in a row, a little geometry lesson meant to shake off company. Your driver mirrors it anyway, because you can play this game too. The sedan doesn't speed. It doesn't dart. It obeys the law with the devotion of a man who believes paperwork protects him. That is the first reality check of surveillance. The criminals you catch are often the ones who follow rules, just not the ones that count. You lose the sedan once, briefly, when it slides through a yellow light that turns red in your face. Congratulations, your heart is now trying to climb out through your throat. You do not run the light. You do not blow the case for pride. You take the next turn, circle the block, and pick the sedan up again 2 streets over, as if it wanted to be found. It heads south, away from downtown. Neighborhoods change the way voices do in a bar, getting quieter, more private. Street parking thickens. Porch lights glow like little surveillance cameras that never blink. The sedan slows near an older apartment building, the kind with a lobby that smells like boiled cabbage and old mail. It turns into an alley lot, then disappears behind a dumpster and a fence. Your driver keeps going. You do not follow into the lot. That is how you get made. Instead, you roll past, casual, pretending the alley is none of your business. A block later, you park and walk back on foot, hands in pockets, face neutral. Your shoes are too loud on the sidewalk. Every step sounds like you are making an announcement. You hate it. You round the corner and see the alley mouth. You see the building's rear entrance, a metal door with chipped paint. You see the sedan parked crooked, nose toward the exit, a quick getaway posture. The trunk is closed now. The suspect is not visible. You wait. Waiting is most of this job, and it never gets easier. A rear window on the second floor glows blue. Television light. A dog barks once and then regrets it. A garbage can lid clinks in the wind. The city's idea of a lullaby. The postal inspector joins you at the corner, breathing quietly through his nose. He does not speak. You don't either. If the suspect comes out and sees 2 men whispering, the night ends badly. After a few minutes, a shadow crosses the frosted glass of the rear door. The door opens. The figure steps out. Same coat, same cap, same gloves. He carries nothing in his hands now, which means the mail went somewhere. He pauses, not to look for tails, but to smoke. That detail hits you harder than it should. You expect nervous habits. You expect scanning eyes. Instead, you get a man who thinks he has already won. He lights up under the weak alley light, face still mostly hidden by the cap brim. You catch the outline of a jaw, clean-shaven, and the little exhale of smoke, like a sigh. He finishes quickly, flicks the butt into a puddle, and goes back inside. No urgency, no rush. He is home, or close enough to it to feel safe. You do not kick the door. You do not pull him out by the collar. You do not have a warrant. And you do not have probable cause that survives daylight. Mail theft is one thing. Breaking into an apartment on a hunch is another. So you do the miserable adult thing. You back off. You write down the address. You note the sedan's make and model. You wait for the license plate later, when it is parked someplace public. Then you go back to the office and start turning observations into court language. It feels like translating a nightmare into a memo. The next morning, you get the plate from a patrol unit that finds the sedan parked on a public street. The registration comes back to a woman in her 70s. Of course it does. The kind of person whose name doesn't raise eyebrows. The kind of person whose car gets waved through life. You pull her file. She lives across town, in assisted living. No current driver's license. Her grandson is listed as an emergency contact. Now you have a thread that looks like family. And family is where forgery likes to hide. You request a quiet background check on the grandson. He is in his 30s. He has a recent termination from an insurance office. The reason is vague in the file, something about altered documentation. Not criminal, not prosecuted, just fired and forgotten. That is how most predators prefer it. No courtroom drama, just a door closing and a new plan forming. His last known address is a cousin's place. But the alley apartment you saw is not that. It is a second location. A workroom, maybe. A place for the typewriter. You feel the case start to shape itself around a person instead of paper. Then the nurse calls you back. Her voice is sharper now. Anger finally getting enough sleep to stand upright. Payroll says the change request came with a typed letter from her and a typed signature. She asks you how a typed signature can move money. You tell her the truth, because offices love forms more than they love people, because a typed name in the right box looks like responsibility, because nobody wants to be the person who slows payroll down. You hear her breathing, trying not to cry, trying not to scream. You tell her you are working it. She asks you if you can fix it. You want to say yes. You want to say, absolutely, we will unwind this and catch him, and your life will go back to normal. But you have seen the back end of these cases. You have seen the letters that get lost, the credit hits that linger, the job offers that evaporate without explanation. So you tell her what you can guarantee. You will document everything. You will get her a case number. You will make sure the bank and payroll understand this is criminal, not careless. It is a small promise. It is the only honest one. After the call, you go back to the evidence, because that is where you can actually win. You spread out the change of address forms, the credit applications, the payroll slip copies. You photograph them. You mark them. You build a grid of defects, like you are mapping stars in a dirty little universe. Broken E, high T, a slightly heavy left margin, inconsistent ink density that suggests a ribbon nearing the end of its life, and something else you did not notice at first. Spacing, not the font, not exactly. The way certain letters sit too close together, as if the machine's escapement is slightly worn. Escapement is a technical word. In human terms, it is the part that moves the carriage one step at a time. The little click that decides how evenly your lies march across the page. A worn escapement makes some letters crowd, like people jostling in a line. You compare the spacing on the nurse's payroll change form to the dead man's credit application. They jostle the same way. That is a relief in a grim sort of way. One machine, one set of hands, one routine. You hand copies of the defect grid to the bank detective and the postal inspector. You tell them you want one thing. You want to find where that typewriter gets fed. Ribbons, carbon paper, correction tape. The little supplies that keep an old machine alive. Because typewriters do not live on intentions, they live on consumables. You start calling repair shops, not the big office supply stores. The little places that still smell like oil and metal filings, where the owner knows every model by touch. Most of them laugh or sigh or tell you nobody uses typewriters anymore. You let them talk. Then you mention carbon paper and bulk ribbon purchases and someone obsessed with alignment. That changes the tone. 2 shops say no, 1 says maybe, and then you get the one that makes your neck muscles tighten. A small repair place on South 12th Street. The owner answers like he has been interrupted mid-argument with a machine. You describe what you are seeing. Broken E, high T, old carbon paper impressions. Somebody buying ribbons like they are stocking a bunker. There is a pause, and you can almost hear him turning to look at a shelf. In his mind, he says, yeah. He says there is a guy. Comes in every few weeks, cash only. Always wants the same ribbon, same width, same brand. Always asks if there is a way to make the alignment tighter. Asks it like a prayer. The owner laughs once, without humor. He says the guy brought in a machine once, but never leaves it, just wants supplies and advice. You ask the owner to describe him. The description is not perfect, nothing ever is, but it lands close to what you saw in the alley. Medium height, dark coat, cap, quiet voice, hands that never want to touch anything bare. You feel that old familiar sensation, the one you get when the world stops being abstract. The suspect is not a shadow anymore. He is a customer, the kind of person who leaves patterns behind like footprints. You make a plan that is half patience, half trap. You ask the owner to call you if the guy comes back. You also ask for something that makes the owner hesitate. Exemplar typing. You want to type test sheets on the shop's loaner machines, the ones that sit in the back for customers, not because you think the suspect used them, because you want a library, a comparison set. If you can match defects to a model, you narrow the world. The owner agrees, reluctantly. He does not love cops, but he loves his machines. And a guy buying carbon paper in bulk sets off his own kind of alarm. You go down to South 12th in the afternoon. The shop is narrow and dense, packed with typewriters like sleeping animals, manuals, electrics, old office beasts with beige plastic and worn keys. The air smells like oil, dust, and ink ribbon, a scent that crawls into your clothes and stays. The owner is a man in his 60s, hands stained with grease, eyes sharp. He points you toward the back table. You set up your paper, your carbon sheets, your evidence style labels. You type the same paragraph on multiple machines, slow and consistent. You do not type like a novelist. You type like a lab. Same pressure, same rhythm, same words. You listen to each machine's sound. Some clack, some thud. One electric hums and snaps like a stapler with ambition. You collect the sheets and bring them back to your lab. This is the part nobody celebrates. Hours of comparison, microscope, ruler, light angles. You line up the broken E on your evidence documents against the shop exemplars. Most of them are clean, too clean. A few have damage, but not the same bite. Then you find it. A loaner machine that the owner calls an old, reliable electric. On its test sheet, the lowercase e has a missing serif. The same bite, the same tiny wound. The T strikes high too, just a hair above the line, like it is always reaching. The spacing has the same occasional crowding. Your skin prickles. This does not prove the suspect used the loaner, but it suggests the suspect's machine is the same make, maybe the same model, maybe even serviced with the same parts. The owner tells you the loaner is the type they fix most often, common in small offices, popular with people who hate computers. He says parts get swapped, type elements get replaced, defects travel. You hear that, and your brain starts building the next step. If parts travel, a defect might not be unique enough. You need something deeper, not just the chipped E, but the pattern of pressure, the alignment, the way the machine behaves under strain. You go back to the originals and look for carbon paper patterns again. The pressure is heavier on the left side of the page. Not always, but often. That suggests the typist is slightly left dominant, or the platen is worn in that direction. You look at the way the baseline rises slightly near the end of long lines. That can mean the typist returns the carriage hard, jarring the machine. Or it can mean the machine itself has a slight tilt, like a table with one short leg. You realize you are not just hunting a person, you are hunting a workstation, a little altar of paper and metal. And people get sloppy at their altars. You ask the bank detective to dig deeper into the terminated insurance clerk. Not just address, associates, car use, purchases, anything that smells like office equipment, pawn records, secondhand stores, classified ads. Back then, paper trails are still mostly paper. You wait while other people do their parts. This is the second reality check. No matter how sharp your eye is, you still need someone to file the subpoena, someone to pull the record, someone to deliver the results. Justice is a relay race run by tired people. 2 days pass. Then the shop owner calls. His voice is low. He says the guy is here. He says the guy just bought 2 ribbons and a stack of carbon paper. He says the guy is asking about alignment again. You tell the owner to keep him talking. If he can, ask him what machine he uses. Ask him if he wants service. Offer a discount. Anything that keeps him in the building. You and the postal inspector are already in a car. The drive feels longer than it is. Red lights feel personal. Every slow driver feels like sabotage. When you arrive, you do not rush in like a movie. You park down the block. You approach like customers. Your clothes are plain. Your hands are empty. Your faces are bored. You step into the shop and let the bell over the door announce you, like it announces everyone. The suspect stands at the counter. You see him in profile, clean jaw, cap, gloves. He holds a paper bag from behind the counter, the kind that carries ribbon boxes. He turns slightly when you enter, eyes flicking over you, quick and flat. Not fear. Assessment? He goes back to the owner, finishes paying cash. He does not linger. He does not browse. He does not look at the machines like a hobbyist. He looks at them like tools. He heads toward the door. This is the decision point. You can stop him now. With what? Suspicion, a pattern, a feeling, or you can let him leave and try to follow him to wherever he keeps the typewriter. You remember the alley building. You remember how close you were and how little it got you. You choose contact. The postal inspector steps to the side, blocking the door just enough to be annoying, not enough to be a crime. The suspect stops because people stop when the path is inconvenient. You step forward and speak softly. You ask if he has a minute. He says no. His voice is calm, like he is refusing a sales pitch. You ask his name. He gives a first name that could belong to anyone. You ask for identification. He says he does not have to. He is right, technically. So you switch tactics. You point at the bag. You ask what kind of machine he uses. You make it sound like curiosity. Collectors talk. He says, an electric. He says it like it ends the conversation. You ask, what model? He hesitates, just a beat. Then he gives a model name that matches the shop loaner's type family. Your stomach tightens. You say you are investigating a fraud case involving typed documents. You watch his eyes, still calm, still flat. He shrugs like fraud is weather. He tells you lots of people type. He tells you you are wasting his time. Then he does something that tells you more than words. He shifts the bag to his left side. Same shoulder dip, same habit. He steps around the inspector and leaves. You follow him outside, but you do not grab him. Not yet. He walks to a bus stop, not a car, not the sedan. He waits like a commuter. He blends in. That is clever in a small, boring way. He gets on the bus and sits halfway back, near the exit. You do not get on. You cannot tail a bus with a car without looking like a clown. And you cannot get on without turning this into a confrontation you still cannot justify. So you let him go. It feels like swallowing a failure. Back in the shop, the owner looks shaken. He says the guy always wears gloves, even in summer. He says the guy never lets anyone touch his machine. He says he once asked the guy what he does for work, and the guy said, paperwork, like it was a joke only he understood. You ask if the guy ever had the shop type anything for him? The owner says no. The guy once asked to use the back table, but the owner refused. The guy did not argue. He just nodded and came back later with money instead of requests. That is another habit. He does not push boundaries loudly. He finds another door. You take the receipts from today's purchase. Cash receipts still have timestamps, sometimes a signature, sometimes a note. The owner wrote down a phone number because the guy asked if he could order supplies in advance next time. The number might be real. It might be a dead end. Dead ends are still places you can stand. You run it. It belongs to a prepaid line. No billing name, of course. But you can subpoena call logs. You can map towers. You can treat his phone the way you treat his typewriting. Not as a confession, but as a pattern. While that paperwork starts crawling through the system, you go back to the documents. You look at the nurse's payroll slip again. You look at the typed employer letters in the suspect's packets. You realize something that makes your mouth go dry. He is not just filling forms. He is creating little ecosystems of trust. Employer verification letters, typed on fake letterhead. Landlord references, typed with formal phrases. Requests for birth records, typed like a citizen who knows how to sound official. He is not stealing identity in one motion. He is manufacturing credibility step by step, the way you build a fake resume. That shifts your hunt. You stop looking for a thief who takes. You start looking for a forger who builds. Builders have schedules. Builders have supply needs. Builders have templates. And templates mean repetition. Repetition means predictability. You sit with the postal inspector and the bank detective, and you lay out the next likely move. New identities need new mail routes. Mail routes start with change of address forms. Change of address forms get dropped somewhere. Usually late, usually quiet. You already saw the midnight drop on camera. You already have the cluster of blue boxes. So you widen the net. You place cameras where you can. Not official post office cameras. Those are too few and too fuzzy. You use nearby business cameras with permission or subpoenas, a liquor store with a blinking sign, and a camera that never sleeps, a gas station with wide-angle coverage, a 24-hour laundromat where nobody asks why you are awake. You map the drop boxes tied to recent forwarding changes. You predict nights. The calendar gives you a window, not a guarantee. It tells you when the paper likes to move, not where the hands will be. So you do what investigators always do when the suspect has a hobby and a routine. You make the routine expensive. You pull every recent change of address submission in the city. Then you sort them by typing defects, broken E, high T, that weird crowding where the letters lean into each other like commuters. You find 5 that match in the last 10 days, all filed between midnight and 2 in the morning, all routed through the same processing station, all pointing toward the same handful of blue drop boxes. And there is your first real prediction, with teeth. He is not writing at night because he is romantic. He is writing at night because he thinks witnesses sleep and cameras blur. You and the postal inspector drive the route in the early evening. You stand near each box like you are waiting for a ride. You listen to the city breathe, traffic hiss, a far-off siren that never quite arrives. The soft slap of a newspaper bag hitting a porch somewhere nearby. You do not feel like a detective. You feel like a tired adult who forgot what he came outside for. That is good. Looking useless is how you survive stakeouts. The first night, nothing happens. You get 2 drunks arguing about a pizza coupon. You get a teenager dropping a love letter like it is a bomb. You get a dog that stares at you with pure accusation. And you get no thick stack of forms. That is the second reality check. Criminals do not perform on cue, even when you are right. The second night, you move the cameras because your suspect is cautious enough to vary the box, but arrogant enough to keep the time. He likes midnight because midnight feels private. So you widen the net, 1 neighborhood over, 1 arterial road over. You add a camera at a box near the highway, on ramp, where a car can vanish fast. You add another at a box near a late-night diner, where a person can blend into grease and coffee. You sit in an unmarked car with the heater barely working. Your breath fogs the window. then clears, then fogs again. The postal inspector eats a gas station sandwich, like a man punishing himself. You keep your eyes on the drop box. The blue paint looks darker at night, almost bruised. At 12:42, a car rolls into the lot. Not the battered sedan from the alley. Different shape, different taillights. Congratulations! He has more than one vehicle, or more than one friend. The car parks crooked, close enough to the box to make you hate it. A figure steps out. Cap, dark coat, gloves that catch the street light for half a second. He is carrying a manila envelope, fat as a dictionary. He walks to the box like he owns it, not rushed, not sneaking, just doing his paperwork. He opens the chute with 2 fingers and feeds in the envelope. It takes a push, then another push, like the box is swallowing something it should not, and you see the edge of carbon paper, that dull black shine peeking from the envelope mouth. You feel your body lean forward before your brain approves it. This is the moment you have been trying to catch. Paper becoming harm right in front of you. You speak into the radio, low and quick. Move. Now. The postal inspector is already out of the car. You follow, staying wide, cutting off the route to the driver's side door. You do not yell yet. Yelling is a tool, not a lifestyle. The figure hears footsteps anyway. He turns, and you see his face clearly for the first time. Young enough to still believe he is clever, old enough to know better. His eyes take you in like an invoice. Then his gaze drops to your hands, checking for a gun, checking for cuffs, and he bolts. No speech, no panic noise, just a sudden sprint, clean and practiced, like he has rehearsed the angle. He runs between the diner and the dumpster enclosure, toward the back lot. You go after him, and the whole world becomes breath and pavement. Your shoes slap hard. Your lungs burn. Your coat feels like an anchor. He is fast, but you are angry, and anger is fuel. He clips the corner of the dumpster, stumbles, catches himself. A manila envelope flies out of his hand and skids across the asphalt. It spins once, then stops, face up. A label on the front, typed. A real person's name. A social security number printed like it belongs on an office form. Your instincts split in half. Chase the man or secure the evidence? The postal inspector keeps running. You stop for the envelope because people can run, but paper tends to stay. You scoop it up, and it is heavier than it looks. Thick with templates, thick with intent. You catch up to the back lot in time to see the figure vault a low fence. He lands awkwardly, then disappears between 2 buildings. A car door slams somewhere in the dark. Then an engine turns over and fades. The inspector returns breathing hard, face tight with frustration. You hold up the envelope like a consolation prize. It is not enough, not emotionally, but it is everything, evidentiary. Back in the car, you do not open it right away. You photograph it first. Front, back, edges, seals. You treat it like a fragile animal, because defense attorneys love to eat sloppy handling alive. Then you slide a finger under the flap and lift it slowly. Inside, there is no dramatic letter, no handwritten confession, no diary of evil. There is something worse. There is organization, a stack of pre-aligned forms, the kind you can feed into a typewriter and hit the same fields every time. There are signature guides, faint pencil lines that show where a name should sit. There are carbon sheets, cut to size, like someone spent a Sunday afternoon making sure duplication is effortless. And then you find the list. Typed, single-spaced, columned like a schedule at an office. Names, dates of birth, addresses, notes in the margin, hospital, school, recent move, divorce, new job, the kind of life details you do not think a stranger would know. But strangers do know if they are patient enough to watch your mail. One name has a mark beside it. Done, ID issued. Your stomach drops because that line is not about credit cards. That line is about the state. That line means someone walked into a government office and walked out with a plastic card that says they are you. You stare at the phrase, and it feels like reading your own obituary. The postal inspector exhales slowly. He says it like it hurts. We have to call the Department of Motor Vehicles. You do not sleep that night. Not really. You do the half sleep of fluorescent offices and paperwork adrenaline. The bank detective meets you at the lab with a legal pad and a face that looks older than yesterday. You lay the envelope contents out under the camera. You photograph every page. You bag the carbon paper. You mark the templates. You isolate the target list like it is a weapon, because it is a weapon made of names. Then you start making calls that will take days to pay off. Department of Motor Vehicles investigators, state fraud unit, county clerk offices, anyone who can tell you how a typed packet can turn into a state-issued identity. The Department of Motor Vehicles investigator on duty sounds tired before you even give your name. You tell her you have a case with forged supporting documents and a confirmed identity issuance under a stolen name. Her tone changes just slightly. Tired becomes careful. She asks for the name on the card. You read it from the list. She asks for the date of issuance. You give it. There is a pause, keys clacking on her end. Then she says, yes, it is in the system, valid, active, no flags, no notes. Congratulations, the state believes your suspect more than it believes your victims. You ask for the application packet, everything submitted to get that card. She tells you it will take a subpoena or a formal interagency request. You bite back the urge to laugh. Of course it will. Even when the building is on fire, the paperwork still wants a form. You start the request process anyway. You send faxes because it is the early 90s and the world still loves paper noises. You wait for signatures. You wait for stamps. You wait while your suspect somewhere out there breathes easily under someone else's name. While you wait, you study the list again. You look at the notes, because notes reveal personality. Hospital next to one name likely means access to personal data. Maybe a worker directory, maybe payroll. School next to another means student records, addresses. Parents, maybe financial aid forms. Recent move is the one that makes your teeth grind. Recent move means the mail is already confused. It means your victim will not notice missing letters. It means the thief is using life transitions like unlocked doors. There is one name circled, no note. Just a circle, heavy ink, pressed hard enough to leave an impression on the page beneath. That circle is not an accident. That circle is focus. You set that page aside because you do not know what it means yet. but your gut recognizes it as the kind of detail that comes back later and ruins your day. By late morning, the Department of Motor Vehicles investigator calls back. She says she can get you a copy of the packet faster if you come in person. You go. The Department of Motor Vehicles office smells like vinyl chairs and impatience. A line of people stands under humming lights, holding number slips, shifting their weight like prisoners. You and the investigator disappear behind a door marked "Employees Only." Back here, the air is colder, the walls bare, the mood pure procedure. She pulls a manila folder from a cabinet and sets it down like it is heavier than paper should be. You open it. You see the application form, typed, not printed from a computer, typed, the same broken E, the same high T. He signed it too, but the signature is a careful imitation, slower than a natural hand. Supporting documents follow, each one designed to answer a question the clerk would have. Proof of residency, a typed lease letter with a landlord's signature that looks like it was practiced. Proof of identity, a birth record request confirmation, typed like official language. A letter from an employer, typed on letterhead that looks real from 3 feet away. From 6 inches away, it is a parody. The letterhead is slightly off-center. The logo is photocopied and fuzzy. The address uses a suite number that does not exist. The notary stamp on one page is crisp, but the notary number is wrong by 1 digit. A mistake a human clerk would never catch without checking. And clerks do not check unless something feels wrong. Nothing felt wrong because the packet was consistent. That is the trick. Consistency is what systems confuse with truth. You ask the investigator who processed it. She tells you the clerk name and the branch office. You ask for surveillance video? She sighs. That office does not keep footage long. 30 days? Sometimes less. This issuance was months ago. The tape is gone. Congratulations, the past has been overwritten by routine. You sit back and let the bleakness settle. Then you push it aside. You still have something. You have the packet itself, and you have the typed defects. You have a state-validated identity out in the wild, and you have a list of targets that tells you where he is headed next. So you decide to stop reacting. You decide to bait him. The bank detective hates the idea because bait means risk, and risk means phone calls to supervisors. But he also knows you cannot chase a man who can become anyone. You pick a bank branch the suspect has touched before, one of the institutions tied to the credit applications. You coordinate with their security manager, a man who wears a tie like he resents it. You ask for a silent alarm trigger, the kind that pings security without turning the lobby into chaos. You flag the stolen identity in their system. Not as fraudulent, because that might block him and scare him. You flag it as review needed, with a quiet instruction to notify law enforcement if the person appears in person for a cash transaction. Then you wait for the next move, and you hate yourself for it, because waiting means someone else might get hurt first. You make it narrower. You look at the target list, and you pick the names with the most immediate financial access. Payroll targets, people with direct deposit, people with stable income. He likes stable income because it is predictable, like his mail pickup time. You notify a small number of potential victims quietly, through their employers, through the bank. You do not tell them everything. You tell them enough to monitor accounts and mail. You tell them to freeze credit if they can. You watch the reactions. Some are grateful, some are offended, like you accuse them of being sloppy. Some are too tired to understand. That last category is the one that keeps you awake, because tired people are easy to steal from. 3 days after you set the bank trap, the call comes in. The flagged identity is at the branch, attempting a withdrawal. Large amount, in person. Your blood goes cold and hot at the same time. You drive like you are chasing time, because you are. You arrive 2 minutes after the call. You walk in, trying to look like a customer, trying to look like you are not about to collide with someone else's life. The lobby is bright and clean, the smell of carpet shampoo and money. A security guard stands near the door, bored but watching. A teller window on the far side has a man standing at it, back to you, cap, coat, same posture. He is holding a withdrawal slip and a state-issued identification card. He looks calm, because calm is part of the costume. You take position near the brochure rack, pretending to read about mortgage rates like you have a future. The bank security manager nods once, subtle. The teller types, then pauses. That is the moment the system hesitates. The man leans forward, speaking softly, as if kindness can hurry a computer. The teller calls a supervisor, casual, practiced. The supervisor comes over, smiles, says something you cannot hear. The man's shoulders stay loose. He hands over another piece of paper, typed of course, a letter authorizing the withdrawal, as if anyone writes permission slips for their own money. You watch his hands, gloved again, indoors, under bright lights. Nobody wears gloves in a bank unless they are hiding something, or very committed to being strange. The supervisor steps away with the identification card and the paperwork. The man waits, patient as a cat. You want to move in right now, but you do not have the arrest yet. You have suspicion and a trap in progress. You need the bank to confirm the identity is flagged, the paperwork is fraudulent, the attempt is criminal. Otherwise, you have a man with a real estate card and you look like a bully. So you wait, and it feels like holding your breath underwater. The supervisor returns with the card. She smiles a little too hard. She tells him there is a delay, a system issue. Could he take a seat? He nods politely and walks to the chairs by the window. He sits with perfect posture. He does not fidget. He does not read the magazines. He watches the door reflection in the glass. Not directly, just enough to see movement behind him. Congratulations. He is not calm. He is vigilant. Your radio crackles softly in your pocket, the postal inspector telling you he is outside with another unit. You respond with a single word, wait, because you are still building your legal footing brick by brick. The bank security manager steps into a back office with you. He shows you the account screen. The identity is flagged. The social security number does not match the account holder history. The address on file changed recently. Via mailed request, typed, of course. The signature on the account card is handwritten, real, from years ago, and it does not match the new typed signature submitted with the change. That mismatch is your seam. The security manager prints the documents. He signs an affidavit. He calls it attempted fraud, and he does it with the bored tone of a man who has seen too much petty theft. You leave the office with paper in hand, and now your body wants action. You step into the lobby again. eyes on the seated man. He meets your gaze for a split second, then looks away like you are not worth attention. You approach, slow, casual, as if you just recognize someone from work. You say his name, the stolen one, the one on the state card. He looks up and he smiles. Not friendly, practiced. He says, yes. You ask if he can step outside with you for a moment, just to clarify something. He stands, smooth, and you see the way his coat hangs, heavy on one side again. A bag strap under fabric. Paper, probably, always paper. He takes one step toward the door, and his eyes flick toward the security guard. The guard is watching now. The man adjusts his path, angling slightly, like he is calculating space. You reach for his elbow, not grabbing, just guiding. He twists away with sudden speed, and the calm mask drops for half a second. Then he runs, not toward the door, toward the teller line, toward the side hallway, marked employees only. He knows banks, he knows layouts, he knows there is always a back exit for staff. You chase, and the lobby erupts into confused noise behind you. Gasps and chairs scraping. He slams through the employees-only door, setting off a shrill alarm that nobody reacts to fast enough. You follow into a narrow hallway that smells like toner and coffee. He is already at the back door, yanking it open, and cold air rushes in like a slap. Outside, the alley behind the bank is slick with old snow and exhaust. A postal inspector unit is supposed to be there. The alley is empty, which is never a good sign when you are expecting help. You register it in a single bitter thought. Either the unit is late, or he already clocked them. He hits the pavement running, shoes slipping once on a patch of old snow. You lunge after him and feel your legs argue with your lungs. The back door bangs behind you, and the sound dies fast in the cold. He cuts left toward the mouth of the alley, aiming for the street and the noise. That is always the move. Get back into civilians. Make you choose between a collar and a headline. You gain a step, just one, close enough to see his coat swing open. A strap rides his shoulder like you predicted, and a flat satchel slaps his hip with every stride. Paper is heavy when you run with it, and it makes people clumsy. You reach for him again, fingers grazing fabric, and he shrugs away like a man shedding skin. Then you hear the postal inspector shout from somewhere you cannot see. A car door slams, tires chirp, an engine revs too high. The unit is here finally, but it arrives like bureaucracy does. A little late and very loud. Your suspect veers hard toward a chain link gate, the kind businesses pretend is security. He knows it is not locked because he has been here before. You know that because he does not slow down. He threads through the opening and disappears into a service lot behind the bank. The lot is a mess of dumpsters, delivery pallets, and a thin corridor between buildings. The kind of place that turns your flashlight into a suggestion. You follow anyway because you are already committed. Your shoes skid on grit and ice, and you catch yourself on a metal railing that leaves rust on your palm. He is ahead, but not by much. You see his breath, a pale stream that gives him away in the dark. He throws a glance over his shoulder, and you see his eyes without the bank lighting. Not panicked, annoyed, like you are a coworker who will not stop asking questions. He reaches into his satchel as he runs, and for a 6-second, your brain offers you every possibility. Gun, knife, spray. But what comes out is a fistful of loose papers. He flings them backward like confetti, not to hurt you, to slow you. Pages slap your face, skim your coat, skitter under dumpsters. Congratulations, you are being attacked with forms. You keep moving because you have learned not to respect theatrics. He hits the far end of the lot and turns again, slipping through a gap between two buildings. The gap is narrow, lined with frozen weeds and broken glass. He knows the path, and you feel your anger sharpen into something colder. A planned exit, a rehearsed route. He did not just run when cornered, he ran where he meant to run. You push through the gap and come out onto a side street with parked cars and a single streetlight. For a half-second, you see him in full silhouette, cap, coat, satchel. Then, a car rolls up to the curb beside him, already moving, already timed. He grabs the passenger door handle and folds into the seat without breaking stride. The car accelerates before the door even closes, tires spitting slush. You catch a glimpse of the rear plate, but your eyes do not trust themselves. It is gone in seconds, swallowed by an intersection and a line of ordinary headlights. The postal inspector's unit swings around the corner too late, brakes grinding, spotlight sweeping empty pavement. You stand there breathing hard, and the city keeps acting like nothing happened. That is what it does best. You go back and pick up the papers he threw. Not because you think they will be admissible now, after being dropped and stepped on, because you cannot believe pieces of his routine on the street. Because every scrap tells you how his mind works. Most are blank templates. Some are typed drafts with fields filled halfway, then abandoned. One is a change of address form with the old address crossed out, not neatly, but hard, a rare emotion leak. You bag what you can, photograph the rest where it lies, and you mark the location. Then you do the part that never makes television. You return to the bank, take statements, and calm down the staff you accidentally terrified. A teller is shaking because she did not sign up for foot chases behind carpeted counters. You tell her she did. Fine. And you mean it. You take the paperwork he presented, the typed authorization letter, the withdrawal slip, the photocopy of the state identification card they made before handing it back. That photocopy is gold, even if it is smeared and crooked. It is his face tied to a name the state believes. It is the costume, documented. You look at the signature line on the withdrawal slip, and you feel the case shift again. He did not type it this time. He had to sign in front of the teller. And he did. The ink is dark, the pressure heavy at the downstrokes, light at the lifts. Handwriting is not a typewriter defect, but it has its own fingerprints. Pen pressure is muscle memory, and muscle memory does not lie easily. You compare it to the typed signatures you have been staring at for weeks. The typed names on the forms slant slightly, right, consistent, mechanical. His real signature slants, left in the final flourish, as if his hand wants to retreat. That mismatch is not just interesting. It is proof of intent. It tells a prosecutor he knows the typed signature is fake because his hand cannot imitate it. He is not confused. He is performing. Back at your office, you spread the new materials out under the lamp. You are tired enough to feel it in your teeth, But now you have two things you did not have before: a face, even if it is a photocopy face, and a confirmed accomplice vehicle, even if you only saw it for seconds. The postal inspector starts working plates because inspectors love the mechanical parts of the world. He pulls traffic camera requests from the intersections near the escape route. He calls it a long shot, and he is right. Cameras are inconsistent, angles are wrong, and the city does not exist to help you. But you try anyway, because trying is what keeps you from accepting the shrug of chance. Meanwhile, the bank detective does what bank detectives do. He follows money, because money does not care how charming a man is. He subpoenas the account the suspect tried to drain, traces recent transactions, and looks for the moment the money touched something physical: cash withdrawals, money orders, payments to utilities, anything that suggests a real address behind the fake one. You go back to the Department of Motor Vehicles packet and stare at it until it becomes personal. The birth record request trail, that rural county office, that loop. You have a hunch the suspect learned something important there. Small offices do not have the same verification rituals as big ones. Small offices want to help. Small offices do not expect a man with a satchel full of typed credibility. So you call the county clerk in that rural county. You introduce yourself, and you hear the pause that always comes when you say fraud. You ask for records, and you hear the other pause, the one that says they have never had anyone ask that before. You learn the suspect mailed in multiple birth record requests over months, all typed, all with self-addressed stamped envelopes, all paid with money orders. He did not need computers. He needed patience and postage. The clerk says the requests seemed normal because the language was correct, because the forms were filled cleanly, because the signatures were typed and nobody wanted to argue about it. You thank her and you hang up feeling grimly unsurprised. Then she calls you back 10 minutes later, voice thinner. She says there was one request that bothered her at the time. A request that included a typed letter asking for expedited processing, and it was signed with a notary name she could not find in her local directory. She did not check statewide because why would she? She says she kept the envelope because it felt strange. You tell her to stop touching it, to put it in a bag if she can. Clean paper, clean hands. You arrange a courier pickup because you are not driving 3 hours for one envelope, not when you are already behind. But you want that envelope because envelopes carry more than mail. They carry postmarks, routing marks, sometimes prints if the criminal gets lazy. And most importantly, they carry return addresses people think are harmless. 2 days later, the envelope arrives, and it feels like receiving a quiet threat. The return address is a rented mailbox service, not a post office box. Different system, different rules, different cameras. He is diversifying. He is adapting. You note it, and you add it to the growing list of places where names disappear. You put the envelope under oblique light, and you see it immediately. A faint rectangular impression, like a card was pressed against the paper while someone wrote on top. Not handwriting. A template. A guide. He is using alignment aids even when he addresses envelopes, because the man cannot stand crooked lines. That is not just neatness. That is compulsion. Compulsion is another kind of routine. And routine is how you catch him when the city will not. The traffic camera results come back with the usual disappointment. You get a blur of taillights. You get one frame where a plate is almost readable, then not. You get enough to confirm the car is a dark, compact, likely late 1980s. Not enough for a door knock. Not enough for a warrant. Not enough for sleep. The bank detective finds a small breakthrough. One of the accounts, linked to the stolen payroll deposits, made a payment to a utility, a gas bill, in a real name. Not the victim's name, a different name, a third name. But the payment address is a duplex on the south side, 2 miles from the alley apartment. You look at the address and feel the map in your head click into a new shape. Workroom and home, Dropbox route and supply shop. He is moving in a tight orbit like a man who hates commuting. You request surveillance on the duplex. Not a raid. Not yet. Just eyes, cameras, patience. Because your suspect already proved he can bolt, and now you know he has a getaway driver. That means if you rush, you lose him again, and next time he will be even cleaner. For 3 nights you watch the duplex from a parked car that smells like cold upholstery. You see normal life. Lights on, lights off, a woman bringing in groceries, a kid on a bike, a dog that barks at everything because it is bored. Then, on the 4th night, you see him, not in gloves this time, bare hands, which tells you he feels safe here. He steps out of the duplex carrying a flat box the size of a typewriter case. Your pulse ticks up. He loads it into the trunk of a different car, not the battered sedan, not the compact from the bank, a third vehicle. Congratulations, he is either well-resourced or well-connected. He drives off, and your surveillance team follows at a distance that feels like restraint and fear mixed together. He heads toward the alley apartment building you already know, the same rear entrance, the same crooked parking posture. He carries the flat box inside. You do not follow. You cannot. You do not have enough for entry, and you are not letting him spot you again. Instead, you write it down, and you start building the next step. A warrant needs more than vibes and a photocopy face. It needs probable cause that ties him to the documents, the mail, the money, and the machine. So you go back to the one place where his machine touches the world in a way he cannot fully control. The typewriter repair ecosystem. Machines get sold. Machines get pawned. Machines get serviced. And service records are paper, which means they can be subpoenaed. You narrow the typewriter make and model based on the shop loaner match and the defect profile. You consult a typewriter specialist, a man who talks about escapement springs like they are sports statistics. He tells you the broken lowercase e suggests a chipped type element, common on certain models that use a replaceable type ball. He also tells you the high striking T can happen when the alignment is slightly off, often from repeated carriage return impact. In plain terms, your suspect hits the carriage return like he is mad at the page. That tracks. The specialist shows you how a worn escapement makes intermittent spacing crowding, especially after hard returns. He says if you see faint letters sometimes, especially an R that fades intermittently, that can indicate a worn ribbon vibrator or a tired escapement mechanism. You go cold because you remember something you have not been looking for. Not the E, not the T. Another defect you have been ignoring because you were hypnotized by the obvious ones. You pull the original credit applications again and scan every R, not just one, all of them. Most are fine. Then you notice the pattern. In longer lines, especially near the right margin, some R characters are faint, like the ribbon did not lift fully. It is intermittent, not constant. That is important. A constant defect could be replicated by a different machine part. Intermittent defects are harder to fake. They are behavior. They are mechanical mood swings. You compare that faint R to the shop loaner exemplar, and there it is, the same occasional ghost R, mostly after hard carriage returns. You feel the satisfaction you never admit out loud. Not joy, just the grim relief of a puzzle piece finally biting into place. Now you have a stronger fingerprint than a broken E, because now you have a constellation. Broken E, high T, intermittent faint R, spacing crowding. Together, they point to one specific kind of machine, likely serviced locally. You ask the South 12th shop owner for his service records and sales records for that model over the last year. He complains because that is his personality. Then he hands you what he has: paper invoices, carbon copies, the exact stuff your suspect loves. You sift through them and find multiple purchases of ribbons and carbon paper by cash customers. Most are anonymous, but one invoice has a name because the customer ordered a part, a replacement type element. The name matches the grandson you already pulled, the fired insurance clerk. Same first name he gave you at the shop back when he played commuter and walked away. He used his real name once because he needed a part, and parts make people impatient. You cross-reference the invoice date with your document timeline. Right after that purchase, the broken E appears. A new type element, chipped. A part that became a signature. You bring that to the prosecutor because prosecutors speak fluent paperwork. You show the invoice, the defect comparison, the bank attempt, the mail forwarding forms, the Department of Motor Vehicles packet. You show the surveillance notes, the alley apartment, the duplex, the midnight drop. You do not tell a story. You build a stack. The prosecutor flips through it like a man checking weight. He asks the question you hate and respect. Can you put the machine in his hands? You tell him you can put the defect pattern in his life. You can put the supplies purchases in his name. You can put him at the shop. You can put him at the bank. You can put his running feet at the drop box. But the machine is still not physically recovered. The prosecutor nods slowly because he knows the truth. Juries like objects. Objects feel like certainty. So you make the next decision. You go for the machine, not by guessing, by narrowing. You pull purchase records for that typewriter model from local retailers and pawn shops. Pawn slips are a special kind of honesty because criminals love cash and pawn shops love paperwork. You find a pawn record from 2 years earlier. A typewriter, same model family, sold by the suspect's cousin. The address on the slip is the same cousin address you saw in the background check. Your suspect has been in this orbit for years, like a man circling a drain he does not want to admit exists. You interview the cousin carefully because family interviews are landmines. The cousin says the suspect stayed with him briefly after losing his job. He says the suspect was always typing late at night, the clacking driving everyone insane. He says he thought it was job applications. He laughs once, bitter. He says the suspect loved office machines, collected them, fixed them, talked about alignment, like it mattered more than people. He says the suspect moved out after an argument about mail because the suspect kept intercepting letters, claiming they were mistakes. You ask if he knows about a second apartment, a workroom? The cousin hesitates, then says the suspect mentioned renting a cheap place for storage. He did not know where. He did not ask, because that is how families survive difficult members, by not asking. You show him a still image from the Dropbox surveillance, the clearest one you have. The cousin goes pale in a slow way, like the recognition takes time to settle. He says, "Yeah, that is him." Now you have identification from someone who knows him, tied to the act. It is not perfect, but it is another brick. You take it back to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor finally gives you the nod that matters. Warrants for the alley apartment, for the duplex, for the cousin address if needed, for any vehicles registered to family members connected to him, and for the rented mailbox service on that rural envelope. You spend the next day doing the tedious choreography of a warrant service. You coordinate with patrol because you want bodies for safety. You coordinate with postal inspectors because it is their domain too. You coordinate with a document examiner colleague because when you find a typewriter, you want it processed correctly. You coordinate with the Department of Motor Vehicles investigator because the state hates being embarrassed and will help once it is already embarrassed. You also coordinate with a locksmith because doors are stubborn and warrants do not make them less stubborn. You plan it for early morning because early morning catches people before they can put on the mask. But you do not do it at dawn. Not exactly. You remember his metronome habits. He likes precise times. 6:12 for the post office box, midnight 43 for the drop box. That tells you he sleeps in the margins of normal life. So you choose a time that is both early and inconvenient. You pick just before 6 in the morning, when the sky is still deciding if it wants to exist, when the streets are empty enough that a running man looks like a confession, when the only witnesses are the insomniacs, the bakers, and the people who have already lost too much. You meet the team in a parking lot that smells like damp asphalt and cheap cigarettes. Patrol cars sit dark with engines off, like animals pretending to sleep. The postal inspector checks his radio twice because he trusts machines more than people. You check your warrant packet again because paper is the only thing allowed to be certain. You go over the plan, slow and dull, because dull keeps you alive. Duplex first, because it is the address tied to money. Alley apartment second, because it is the address tied to the machine. And if the suspect is inside, either one, you do not improvise heroics. You just close the doors and let his routine run out of hallway. You ride in the second car, not the lead. Lead cars get seen first, and you need surprise more than you need pride. The city slides by in gray. Storefronts shuttered, streetlights still on like nobody bothered to tell them. Morning is coming. You think about that satchel slapping his hip as he ran. Paper has weight, and he keeps choosing to carry it anyway. That is either devotion or compulsion or both. Both are predictable. The first stop is the duplex. It looks harmless in daylight that is not quite daylight. Small yard, tired siding, a porch that creaks in the imagination. You approach with the quiet choreography you have practiced 100 times. 2 at the front, 2 at the back, 1 watching the street. A neighbor's porch light clicks off, like someone gave up on waiting for dawn. You stand at the door and listen. No television. no music, just the house settling, the faint tick of heat pipes, the private sounds of ordinary life. Then you knock, firm, not angry. Warrant service is not supposed to sound like revenge. You call out, "Police, search warrant." A pause, a shuffle. Then the door opens a crack. Chained, a woman's face appears, older than the car registration suggested, eyes tired and instantly afraid. You explain again, slow, clear, showing the paper, naming the address. Her hands shake when she unhooks the chain. She is not your suspect. She is collateral, the kind no one writes headlines about. You step inside, and the air smells like laundry soap and last night's dinner. You hate how normal it is. You ask her who else is home. She says her nephew, sometimes, but he is not here. Sometimes is a word that ruins cases because it can mean anything. You do a protective sweep, quick and respectful. Rooms first, closets last. You find a kid's bedroom that has not been slept in for weeks. You find a stack of unopened mail on the kitchen counter. Some of it not addressed to her. Congratulations, even the innocent end up holding evidence when the thief lives nearby. You photograph it where it sits, because moving it turns it into a defense argument. Then you get to the utility bills. The one the bank detective flagged is there, paid, slip stapled to it. The name on the bill is not hers, not his either. Another borrowed skin. You ask her about it, and she looks confused, then ashamed, as if confusion is a crime. She says her nephew handles some things for her. She says he is good with paperwork. That phrase hits like a punch, because it is always the same euphemism. Good with paperwork means someone knows how to make systems obey. You search the common areas carefully. No typewriter, no ribbons, no carbon paper stacks. But in a hallway closet, behind winter coats, you find a flat cardboard box. Inside are blank change of address forms, not filled out, just stocked like ammunition. There are also bank deposit slips from 3 different banks, all unused, all clean. And there is a small notebook, cheap spiral, with addresses written in tidy block letters, not typed, handwritten. That is new. A human hand showing up where the machine usually speaks. You bag it because you bag anything that looks like planning. You ask the woman where her nephew stays when he visits. She nods toward the back room, the one you already saw. You look again, closer this time, not for him, for habits. A drawer has office supply receipts inside. South 12th Street Typewriter Shop, ribbon purchases, carbon paper, correction tape, cash receipts, but kept anyway, because some people cannot stop documenting themselves. You photograph and bag. You keep your voice gentle when you tell the woman her nephew is suspected in a fraud investigation. Her face tightens, not into disbelief, into resignation. She says he always liked old machines. She says he used to type letters for her, complaints, appeals, anything official. She says when he typed, he looked calm, like the world finally lined up. Then she says something that changes your posture. She says he has a storage place not far, where he keeps his equipment. She never went. She never wanted to. But she knows the building, because he asked her for a ride once, and she waited in the car. You ask for the address. She hesitates, then gives it like it hurts to hand you a door. It is the alley apartment building, the one you already watched. So now the duplex becomes what it always was, a staging area, a place for bills, cars, and cover. The real altar is still behind that chipped metal door in the alley. You leave the duplex with boxes of paper and the sour taste of family fallout. Outside, the morning has finally committed. Gray light, low clouds, the kind of day that never fully wakes up. You move to the alley building with more units, more bodies, more chances for chaos. The locksmith meets you near the rear entrance, tools clinking softly. A patrol sergeant reminds everyone, calm voices, no shortcuts. You take your position and listen again. The alley smells like wet cardboard and old grease. A delivery truck groans somewhere nearby, metal complaining. You knock at the rear door, then announce, police, search warrant, silence. You try again. Silence that feels intentional. The locksmith steps in and works fast because he has done this dance too many times. The lock gives with a soft pop that feels obscene, like you just opened someone's diary. You move inside, and the stairwell air hits you. Stale cooking, damp concrete, and something else, faint but familiar. Ribbon ink. It is a weird smell to recognize, but you do. Like burnt plastic and old pennies. You climb to the second floor and find the apartment number from the surveillance notes. Door closed, no sound. You knock, announce, then wait the legally required heartbeat. Then you go in. The apartment is small and dim, curtains drawn tight, no television glow this time, no human movement, but the place is not empty the way an abandoned place is empty. It is empty the way a workroom is empty after someone steps out for supplies. A table sits near the only window, and it is covered in neat stacks of paper. You see the typewriter immediately. It sits centered, squared to the table edge, like it is being displayed. A beige electric model with a hard plastic shell. Keys shiny from use. Beside it are ribbon boxes, open, some new, some used, all stacked by size. Carbon paper sheets lie in a flat pile, cut with scissor precision. Alignment templates are taped to the table, faint pencil lines marking fields and signature spots. This is not just a criminal workspace. This is a craft station. You do not touch anything yet, because touching is how you ruin the gift you have been begging for. You let the evidence tech photograph the entire scene in place. Wide shots, medium shots, close-ups on the platen, the keys, the ribbon path. Then you let them start the slow process. Bagging, labeling, sealing. It is boring, and it is sacred, because boring is what survives in court. You scan the room with your eyes, because your eyes are still faster than paperwork. A shoebox under the table is stuffed with stolen mail, envelopes from banks, hospitals, utilities, some opened cleanly, some steamed and resealed so carefully you have to tilt them to see the glue line. Congratulations, he is not just stealing mail, he is returning it to the world, looking untouched. A filing cabinet stands against the wall, drawers labeled in typed tape. Names, not categories, not months, names. Each drawer is a person. You pull one drawer and see the life inside. Photocopied identification, typed letters, bank forms, a utility bill used as proof of address, a list of security questions and guest answers, mother's maiden name, first pet, last 4 digits. You close it again because even looking feels invasive. But invasion is what he has been doing, and you are here to stop it. The evidence tech calls you over to the typewriter itself. They have gloved hands, careful posture. They point at the type element, the little spinning part that strikes the letters. There is visible damage on one corner, a tiny nick. You cannot see the broken E with your naked eye. Not yet, but you do not need to. You already feel it in your bones, the way a detective recognizes a familiar liar. The tech asks if you want an exemplar test typed. This is always a debate. Typing on it changes it, adds fresh ribbon marks, creates new impressions, but it can also confirm your constellation of defects right here, right now. You make the decision the lab would approve of. No test here, not in the apartment, not without documenting the ribbon position, the carriage settings, the exact condition. You seize it as is. Let the controlled environment do the talking. Then you find the half-finished packet. It is on the table, clipped together. Tomorrow's date typed at the top. A fresh target, a fresh life, about to get rewritten. One form is filled halfway, then stopped mid-line, like someone heard a noise and paused. That noise might have been nothing. Or it might have been your surveillance car outside on the fourth night. You bag it like it is a bomb, because in a way it is a bomb that detonates inside someone's credit history. You keep searching because the outline of a life never fits in one room. In the kitchen trash, under coffee grounds, you find shredded drafts, not cross-cut, not fancy, just hand-torn, because people get lazy when they feel safe. You reconstruct enough to see they are employer verification letters, each one typed with a different company name. He is making reality by inventing workplaces, because workplaces are what institutions trust. In the bedroom, you find gloves, boxes of them, latex, vinyl, different sizes, a man committed to not leaving skin behind. In a drawer, you find a thin folder labeled templates. Inside are photocopied forms from multiple agencies, each one with faint marks showing where to type. This is how he stays consistent. This is how he keeps the state believing. Then you find the second thing the outline warned you about. A second machine, not on display, not on the altar table, in a closet wrapped in a towel, like it is being protected. Smaller, a manual typewriter, darker body, keys stiff. A backup or a traveling unit. You do not know yet if it is part of the same crime set, but you bag it too because you are not giving him options. By mid-morning, the apartment looks like a hurricane of evidence tags, and your team looks like people who have been breathing dust and adrenaline for hours. Still no suspect. That is the price of doing it safely. You did not kick in doors at midnight and risk a fight in a hallway. You waited for warrants, and he stayed one step ahead for now. You call in surveillance units to hold on the building, because if he comes back here. Routines are gravity. You set up inside an empty apartment across the hall, borrowed from the building manager who does not want trouble. You sit on the floor, backs against peeling paint, and listen to the building breathe. Pipes clink. Someone's radio murmurs through a wall. Footsteps pass, then fade. You stare at the suspect's door, now sealed with evidence tape, like it is a mouth you finally shut. Hours pass. It is mostly boredom, with spikes of heart rate when someone stops too long in the hallway. You think about the nurse, working her shift while her money takes vacations without her. You think about the dead man whose identity is still filing applications from the grave. You think about how easy it is to become a problem when your information is everywhere. Then, close to 6 in the evening, the building's rhythm changes. A car door slams in the alley. Footsteps on the stairs, not rushed, familiar. A key ring jingles once, then stops because the hand holding it knows which key to use. You hear him before you see him, and the sound is infuriatingly calm. He climbs the last steps and turns into the second-floor hall. He is wearing the gloves again. He is carrying a flat satchel on his left side. Same dip, same habit. He stops short when he sees the tape on his door. Not a dramatic freeze, just a slight pause, like a man noticing a new parking sign. He leans closer, reads the tape, reads the notice. You can almost hear him doing mental math. Warrant served, time window. What did they take? What did they see? He turns his head slightly, scanning the hallway. Not panicked, evaluating. You step out from across the hall with the postal inspector and a patrol unit behind you. You keep your voice level. You use his real name, the one from the shop invoice, the one from the cousin, the one that belongs to him, no matter how many forms he typed. For the first time, his face shifts, not fear, not guilt, annoyance, deep and personal. Like you interrupted him mid-sentence, he lifts his hands slowly, palms out, like he is the reasonable one. He looks at the patrol officers, then at you, then back at the tape. He says, "You cannot be in there without permission." He says it like he is correcting a clerk. You tell him you have a warrant. You tell him the warrant is executed. You tell him to turn around. He does not run. That is the surprise. He stands there and he argues procedure. He says you cannot prove he did anything. He says those are just forms. He says he types because he likes typing, and liking something is not a crime. He says lots of people use carbon paper. He says the post office box is legal. He says the mail forwarding is legal if the person requests it. He says a typed signature is still a signature if the system accepts it. And there it is. His whole philosophy, spoken out loud in a hallway that smells like old carpet. Reality is not what is true. Reality is what the system stamps. You step closer and you tell him to turn around again. He sighs, exaggerated, like you are being difficult. Then he complies, slow, theatrical, letting you cuff him as if he is tolerating a child. He turns his head and says, "You know none of this will stick." He says, "You will lose the paperwork." He says, "The bank will settle." He says, "In a year, you will forget my name." That is the arrogance of a man who thinks bureaucracy is a fog he can hide in forever. You walk him down the stairs and out into the alley. Patrol puts him into the back of a car, and the door closes with that final, simple sound. No music, no speech, just the end of movement for one body, while all his paper damage keeps moving without him. Inside his satchel, you find what you expect. Fresh forms, pre-stamped envelopes, carbon sheets, cut to size. A small address book of targets, separate from the one you seized. He is redundant, because redundancy is how you survive when you do not trust the world. You catalog everything because the case is not won by handcuffs. It is won by documentation that outlives his excuses. At the station, he sits in an interview room and keeps the same posture from the bank lobby. Straight spine, hands folded, eyes flat. He asks for a lawyer, but not immediately. First, he wants to talk because talk is how he tries to regain control. He tells you he never stole anything physical. He tells you identities are public information. He tells you the system is flawed and he just knows how to use it. He says, if a clerk accepts a typed signature, that is on them. He says, if a bank mails pre-approved credit offers, that is on them. He says, if someone does not check their mail, that is on them. He says, I just filled out forms. Congratulations, you have caught a man who thinks morality is a filing error. You do not argue ethics with him because ethics debates do not convict people. You ask him about the typewriter. He smiles. Small. He says, it is a machine. He says, machines do not lie. You tell him, machines also do not choose victims. People do. He shrugs because shrugging is his version of mercy. Then he asks for the lawyer, and the room gets quieter because now the case belongs to the slow part of the world. Charging decisions, counts of mail theft, counts of forgery, counts of identity fraud, each count needing a victim, a date, a document, a link. You spend the next days in the fluorescent grind. You notify victims, which is its own kind of violence. You call people and tell them their name has been worn by a stranger. Some go silent. Some get angry and demand to know why you did not stop it sooner. Some cry in a way that sounds embarrassed, like tears are another debt. You tell them what steps to take. Credit freezes.